Atong tawagon si Attorney Rodney C. Ato.
May buntag sa tanan. It is with honor that I introduce to you the keynote speaker of the Mindanao Peace Studies Conference 8. Justice Maria Filomena Singh was born on June 25, 1966. As preparatory course for the College of Law, nahuman niya ang Bachelor of Arts in English, major in Imaginative Writing, cum laude, sa University of the Philippines. Nahuman niya ang iyang Juris Doctor degree sa Ateneo de Manila University School of Law with the second honors distinction. Nahumansab siya o Master of Laws in International Legal Studies sa Washington College of Law sa American University in Washington, D.C., United States of America. Nagpractice siya o abogasya sulod sa napulong katuig. Atong wala pa siya i-appeal sa Hudikatura ni atong October 2002, isip presiding judge sa Branch 31, Metropolitan Trial Court sa Quezon City. Gi-appoint siya na executive judge sa Metropolitan Trial Court, Quezon City for 2 terms. Dungan niini, napili o nilingkod si Justice Singh, isip representante sa tanang first level courts sa nasod sa Board of Trustees sa Philippine Judicial Academy. Nagserbisyo siya sa Philippine Judicial Academy Board of Trustees hangtod sa iyang promotion sa Regional Trial Court, Quezon City, isip presiding judge sa Branch 85 ni atong Hunyo 2007. Si Justice Singh gihatagan og Don Antonio Madrigal Award, isip Most Outstanding First Level Court Judge of 2007 sa Society for Judicial Excellence of the Supreme Court. Gikan Agosto 2009 hangtod Hunyo 2010, si Justice Singh usa ka Hubert Humphrey Fellow sa Court Management and Judicial Education sa U.S. Department of State. Ug sa dagan sa maong fellowship, nagtrabaho siya sa institutional reform sector sa World Bank, particular sa judicial reforms project sa Europe ug Central Asia. Sa samang tuig, si Justice Singh nahimo usab nga unang Philippine Judicial Fellow sa Federal Judicial Center sa Washington, D.C., ang educational arm sa U.S. Supreme Court. Niadtong March 14, 2014, si Justice Singh gi-appoint as Associate Justice of the Court of Appeals. She served as chairperson of the Court's Committee on Continuing Judicial Education ug isip miyembro sa Court's Committee on Rules, Committee on Gender and Development ug editor sa Court of Appeals Journal. Nagserbisyo siya sa daghang committee sa Korte Suprema. Lakip ang Technical Working Group nga nag-draft sa Rule on Small Claims o sa mga templates niini. Ang Technical Working Group on the updating of the Philippine Bench Book of Forms for Trial Court Judges, Technical Working Group on the revision of the rules governing notaries public. Sa pagkakaroon, si Justice Singh usa ka miyembro sa Committee of Gender Responsiveness sa Judiciary, Technical Working Group sa Electronic Notarization, Subcommittee para sa revision sa Code of Professional Responsibility, and Working Vice Chairperson sa Subcommittee para sa revision sa Rules of Civil Procedure. Niadtong 2017, si Justice Singh adunay pribilehiyo sa pag-draft sa Chapter 6 sa Swift and Fair Administration of Justice of the Philippine Development Plan, ang economic blueprint sa nasod para sa 2017 to 2040. Niini nga chapter, gituso ni Justice Singh ang usa ka pamaagi sa sektor alang sa paghatod sa hustisya, usa ka dako nga pagbalhin gikan sa tradisyonal nga pamaagi sa ahensya. Si Justice Singh mao ang chairperson sa Civil Law Department sa Philippine Judicial Academy ug milingkod sa Subcommittee for Curriculum Review. Miyembro usab siya sa faculty sa daghang mga law school sa nasod. Lakip ang Ateneo de Manila University, University of the Philippines, University of Santo Tomas, Lyceum University, De La Salle University o ang Manuel L. Quezon University. Niadtong 2021, si Justice Singh gi-appoint isip expert resource person sa Legal Education Board Curriculum Revision Committee sa paghimo sa revised model law curriculum para sa legal education. Justice Singh is a published author. Kaniadtong 2021, nag-co-author siya o usa ka best-selling pre-week reviewer sa remedial law para sa mga bar examinees. Gipresenta niya usa ka papel sa court and case management sa imbitasyon sa International Organization for Judicial Training, ang global network sa mga judicial training institutions. Nagsulat usab siya og isang tatunki para sa mga trial court judges of the Philippines, as well as a working paper sa pagpatuman sa ethical standards. Nakapublish siya og ubay-ubay ng mga artikulo sa Court of Appeals Journal o sa Ateneo Law Journal. Si Justice Singh usab ka-aktibo nga magtutudlo sa mandatory continuing legal education. Gipili isip isa ka 17 na Metrobank Professional Chair Lecturer para sa 2021. Usa ka sikat na lecture series para sa mga outstanding members of the judiciary. Ang unang babae nga gihatagan niini nga papila. Niadtong May 18, 2022, nadumpa si Justice Singh at ubangan ni Chief Justice Alexander G. Hesmundo, isip ika-194th na Associate Justice sa Korte Suprema. Mga kaigsuonan, gipanikamutan ni Justice Singh nga makaani sa puntuan karon, pero tungod sa mga dili manikayan nga kahimtang, dili siya makaani. Pero nag-andam siya og recorded keynote address para sa atong tanan. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Justice Maria Filomena D.C.
President of the Fathers at Orioles University, Father Randy Jasper Ochike, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Research, Engineer Zenaida Azura, Vice President for Administrative and Student Affairs, Attorney Rodney C. Ato, Dean of FSUU College of Law, Mr. Jose Roy Viralio III, Senior Advisor, Peace Building and Governance, Strengthening the Implementation of Regional and Local Peace and Development Agendas in Mindanao, GIZ-GMDH, Country Director, GIZ Office, Manila. Dr. Sherlyn Medori T. Alegre, Director, Graduate Studies and Research. Mr. Jeffrey Karin, Director, Community Involvement and Advocacy Development Centers, NSDP Policy Center. Good morning to one and all. It is an honor and a privilege to deliver the keynote address at this 8th Mindanao Peace Studies Conference of the Fathers at Orioles University, in collaboration with GIZ-GMDH. I apologize to all of you that I could not join you in person for reason of other equally important work commitments. Please allow me to begin by commending the FSUU, the GIZ, and all the organizers and participants in this peace conference for the work that you have done and that you continue to do. The pursuit of peace is a monumental task in terms of scope as well as impact. Until the day comes that peace is fully realized, it will always be necessary to talk about peace. Perhaps some no longer believe that the day will come. I, on the other hand, choose to believe. But I concede that the notion of peace can at times seem rather elusive, especially in times as trying as these. We live in a world that has been ravaged by disasters, both natural and man-made. Our lives have been upended by a pandemic, and we are still reeling from the dire consequences of COVID. Our planet continues to die right before our eyes. And the topic of peace has sadly again hopped the headlines. Global conflict, war on a large scale, looms threateningly on the horizon. Yet, we cannot lose sight of the conflicts that beset us, some larger than others, which all impact our daily lives. And there remains the daily struggle for many people, many communities, just to be heard, just to be seen. These include the challenges that many of our indigenous peoples and communities continue to face. The rights of indigenous peoples should be considered a pressing national and not only a regional concern. The statutory definition of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples under Republic Act number 8371 or the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997, the IPRA, in particular distinguishes them as historically differentiated from the majority of Filipinos, thereby effectively classifying them as minorities. Fewer in number does not and should not equate to less in stature and standing. The recognition of and preservation of minority rights, of indigenous people rights in particular, is the true measure of inclusivity and equality guaranteed by no less than our Constitution. In the same way that our national territory is composed of more than 7,000 islands, so too is our nation woven from a tapestry of a multitude of languages, traditions, and cultures. Genuine peace can only be achieved through continual dialogue to attempt a consensus or at least a convergence among these plurality of interests, identities, and values in order to forge a united front in the face of all of our difficulties. History, however, has shown that dialogue is not always present nor fruitful. History, however, has shown that dialogue is not always present nor fruitful. Still and all, that the dream of peace is woven into the very fabric of our society. Nothing less than the highest law of the land, our Constitution, invokes the word peace several times. In the preamble, when it speaks of the aspiration for a regime of truth, justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace. In Article 2, Section 2 of our Declaration of State Principles, where it is stated that the Philippines renounces war as an instrument of national policy, adopts the generally accepted principles of international law as part of the law of the land, and adheres to the policy of peace, equality, justice, freedom, cooperation, and amity with all nations. And then again in Article 2, Section 5, stating that the maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, and the promotion of the general welfare are essential for the enjoyment by all the people of the blessings of democracy. Equally enshrined in our Constitution is the recognition of the rights as well as the importance of our indigenous peoples and their customs, traditions, and knowledge. Under Article 2, Section 22, the state recognizes and promotes the rights of indigenous cultural communities within the framework of national unity and development. In Article 12, Section 5, it provides that the state shall protect the rights of indigenous cultural communities to their ancestral lands to ensure their economic, social, and cultural well-being, and that Congress may provide for the applicability of customary laws governing property rights or relations in determining the ownership and extent of ancestral domain. Congress has done so through the IPRA. Article 14, in turn, on education, science and technology, arts, culture, and sports, in Section 2, refers to indigenous learning systems. In Section 10, it provides that the state shall support indigenous, appropriate, and self-reliant scientific and technological capabilities. while Section 17 provides that the state shall recognize, respect, and protect the rights of indigenous cultural communities to preserve and develop their cultures, traditions, and institutions, and it shall consider these rights in the formulation of national plans and policies. In the last 35 years since the adoption of these constitutional guarantees, the most difficult task has been and continues to be breathing life into these words, turning abstract aspirations into tangible outcomes. I submit that we in the judiciary ought to know a thing or two about the pursuit of peace, that in fact we are in the very process of peacemaking. Justices and judges are, at the end of the day, peacekeepers and peacemakers. It is before the courts that we bring our conflicts, be they with one another or with the state. Our court's very mandate is to mediate legal disputes, resolve conflicts, and settle controversies. Jurisprudence itself is a discourse. Thus, in many cases where there are various viewpoints that cannot be reconciled into a single opinion, justices write separate or concurring or dissenting opinions in the recognition that though the Supreme Court at the end of the day must speak with one voice, it is composed of 15 justices who come from diverse backgrounds and who represent different ideologies and philosophies. For instance, the stirring words of former Chief Justice Renato Puno in the conclusion to his separate opinion in the 2000 case of Cruz versus Secretary of Environment and Natural Resources, where he opined eloquently on the constitutionality of the IPRA, remained poignant to this very day. And his separate opinion is now required reading in freshman constitutional law classes. Allow me to quote, "The struggle of the Filipinos throughout colonial history had been plagued by ethnic and religious differences. These differences were carried over and magnified by the Philippine government through the imposition of a national legal order that is mostly foreign in origin or derivation. Largely unpopulist, the present legal system has resulted in the alienation of a large sector of society, specifically the indigenous peoples. The histories and cultures of the indigenes are relevant to the evolution of Philippine culture and are vital to the understanding of contemporary problems. It is through the IPRA that an attempt was made by our legislators to understand Filipino society, not in terms of myths and biases, but through common experiences in the course of history. The Philippines became a democracy a centennial ago, and the decolonization process still continues to this day. If the evolution of the Filipino people into a democratic society is to truly proceed democratically, that is, if the Filipinos as a whole are to participate fully in the task of continuing democratization, it is this court's duty to acknowledge the presence of indigenous and customary laws in the country and to affirm their coexistence with the land laws in our national legal system." End of quote. Chief Justice Puno's opinion, as well as those of the other justices in Cruz, continues to be invoked and cited in succeeding cases dealing with the IPRA and indigenous people's rights. They continue to inform our thoughts and shape our reasoning. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Robert Jackson famously quipped that we on the Supreme Court are not final because we are infallible, but we are infallible only because we are final. We justices will be the first to agree that we are certainly not infallible, and therefore the pursuit of justice, just like the pursuit of peace, is a constant journey of re-examination and re-evaluation, so that we might hew ever closer to the core tenets and bedrock principles that animate our society. But the judiciary as an institution recognizes that for our work to have meaning and value beyond merely its coercive power, people must actually see and believe that we are doing justice. They must witness to believe that justice is not only for those with power, money, or connections, but it is just as much, if not more, for those who have less, in the words of former President Ramon Magsaysay Jr. It is why we hold ourselves, not only as judges, but as lawyers as well, to the highest ethical standards. We strive to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. The proper functioning of our courts is a cornerstone of peace. When people believe that our courts are indeed dispensing justice with competence, integrity, probity, and independence, then we do our part in fostering peace. As attributed to U.S. President Eisenhower, peace and justice are two sides of the same coin. When people believe that the courts fall short of their task, we fail the people who, rather than being empowered, are left disenfranchised and disillusioned. When legal institutions fail, people feel compelled to take measures into their own hands. For if the very institution that is supposed to hear their pleas and prayers shuns or spurns them, who else do they have to turn to except themselves? As the judiciary cannot survive without the trust and confidence of the people it serves, the Supreme Court, through the courts, are dead set on earning such trust and confidence. To this end, we have been undertaking some of the most transformative activities ever conceived in the court's 121-year history. I have spent 20 years in the judiciary and have spent time in all levels of the judicial system, from the first level trial courts and now in the court of last resort. I know firsthand that it is a system that is far from perfect, but I assure you that we are not standing idly by. The Supreme Court of the Philippines recently released its Strategic Plan for Judicial Innovations 2022-2027, or what we call the SPJI. Under the stewardship of the Chief Justice, the Honorable Alexander G. Esmundo, the Supreme Court endeavors to concretize the path towards achieving its long-time aspiration of enabling the judiciary to deliver responsive and real-time justice. This is the Supreme Court's recognition of the need for resilience and adaptability. The SPJI is aimed at ensuring that the judiciary can continue to serve the people as an institution that is at its best, and that it will truly function as a bulwark anchoring such universal principles as the rule of law and the dignity of all, precepts that underpin human civilization, while also being responsive to change and welcoming of improvement. As made clear in the SPJI, the Supreme Court affirms that one of the four guiding principles for its plans is that of equal and inclusive justice. Springing forth from this is one of the SPJI's three stated outcomes, which is to improve access to justice through inclusivity, transparency, and accountability in the court's adjudicative and administrative systems and procedures. One of the primary objectives in achieving the outcome of access to justice is enhancing public access to information and legal services. In St. Thomas More's Utopia, he writes of a world where the laws are easily understood by all people, where the pursuit of justice is not hampered by unnecessary complications and obscured behind technical rules and legal jargon, or at least a world where one does not need to spend 4 years in law school and at least another preparing to hurdle the bar in order to comprehend the legal system. There are concrete steps that the Supreme Court is taking in this direction. Streamlining and easing the process, even of just simply finding the laws and the rules, is one such step. Such an aim calls for innovation, technological in character, which can be viewed as a corollary of resilience and adaptation. As fellow scholars, I am certain that you can appreciate how simplifying the process of research can be one of the most powerful tools towards increased productivity and relevance. The Supreme Court is thus set to reboot the Supreme Court e-library and employ artificial intelligence in making legal research much more convenient and faster. With regard to the decisions and resolutions our courts render, the Supreme Court is exploring the inclusion of a program similar to that used in the United States, Shepherd, which traces the history of a particular case and its relation to other cases. This will help ease the process of navigating through our jurisprudence. Also, as part of our ongoing revision of the rules of court and the rules on pleading, practice, and procedure, we aim to produce a compendium of such rules as a capstone in order to facilitate ease of reference. And for court issuances and guidelines, we have recognized that the lack of a single repository has bogged down our dockets and needlessly confused litigants. We have therefore resolved to develop a complete compilation of such administrative issuances. Language too is an important part of inclusion. To this end, we are looking to expand our access to justice sites to include not only English and Filipino, but other languages and dialects as well. We have also recognized that elimination of discrimination begins with the words we use. And in this regard, we have institutionalized the use of gender-fair language in all courts, offices, and issuances. We believe this is an important step towards fostering sensitivity and respect for the differences inherent in all people, be it in religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, politics, culture, and whatever else. We also explicitly recognize that access to justice remains a stifling challenge for many Filipinos. Therefore, to ensure that marginalized sectors, identities, groups, and communities, including of course our indigenous peoples and communities, can be given adequate aid and representation, we recognize that law schools, such as the one here in FSUU, have the significant potential to provide quality legal aid services. Such schools are also in a unique position to respond to the particular circumstances or problems in a given community. To this end, we have made the completion of the clinical legal education program courses a requirement for bar examination applicants beginning in 2023, and the establishment of legal aid clinics in our law schools a mandatory requisite for continued operations. It is our vision that with the setting up of legal aid centers in over 124 operational law schools across the country, more disadvantaged and underserved members of society will be able to avail of free legal aid services. But in truth, our SPJI admits that there is so much more that needs to be done towards ensuring that no one in need of legal aid or representation falls through the cracks. This is why we welcome the scholarship that conferences such as this one produce, as studying them can help us identify where we are falling short and how we can do better. Indeed, as enshrined in our Bill of Rights, free access to the courts and quasi-judicial bodies and adequate legal assistance shall not be denied to any person by reason of poverty. Justice for all, for each and every Filipino, must not remain simply a slogan. It should transcend mere rhetoric, must contain more than empty platitudes. It must be lived. In conclusion, I must reiterate that we must believe that peace is possible, whether in our lifetimes or in that of the generations soon to come, and that genuine and lasting peace must rest on an inclusive foundation. Finally, peace is about finding solutions, commonalities, similitudes, links, and ties. It is at bottom about people. The recognition that every human being is equal, entitled to dignity and respect, bound to each other by the singular aspiration to live and flourish under a regime of the rule of law and the reign of decency. I bid you all good morning once again, and I wish you a fruitful and successful conference. Thank you.